This is my review of Cells at Work Code Black. Okay, so this episode actually explores the idea of sexually transmitted diseases, or STDs, or STIs, depending on what your preferences are. Either diseases or infections, they're kind of interchangeable, but they basically mean the same thing. And we also see, basically we see 2143 grow a spine in this episode, for the most part. In this episode, he kind of finally accepts his role as a red blood cell, and it shows. He definitively grows his spine quite a bit in this episode. And even becomes a positive influence for 1196 to look up to. So it starts off at the end, the last episode, where after they helped with a erection, as I so dodgily talked around in my last review, and the 1196 and her comrades show up, explaining that Gonococci have actually invaded the body, and which is both good and bad news, because on the one hand, it does put the red blood cells' minds at ease that their efforts actually did result in the sperm reaching their destination. But on the other hand, it also, because of that, the Gonococci were able to get in and infect the body. And the white blood cells aren't entirely sure if they're going to be able to fend them off and tell the red blood cells to evacuate the body before they get to the urethra. So the red blood cells do exactly that and go back on their deliveries. And 2143 even makes it a personal mission to assure people about what's going on, and make sure that their minds are at ease so that they don't worry about the Gonococci infecting the rest of the body. And sure enough, he tells some normal cells about it, telling them that, and they tell him that he seems pretty chipper about that the white blood cells will be able to defend the body and do their job, but also points out that Gonococci actually proliferate very quickly for bacterium, and that it's very likely that the white blood cells are fighting an uphill battle. And also during this sequence, 2143 actually comes across some platelets who are kind of refusing to work and even bawling on the ground, bawling and curled up into a ball and crying, because they believe that the Gonococci is going to get them if they continue to do their job. And 2140 and the leader of the platelets is kind of yelling at them and snapping at them for kind of just being, well, children, which is what they are. Let's be honest, that's what platelets are established to be. But 2143, he actually reassures the platelets, telling them that the white blood cells are doing their job, and that if they do the best they can do, then the white blood cells can do their job just as well. And that puts the platelets' minds at ease, and they go back to work, and the commander and their leader thanks 2143 for his calming speeches and his calming words. At which point 2143 goes parts ways with them and continues onward with his deliveries. However, as he finds out several minutes later, and as we're actually shown, the fight against the Gonococci is actually an uphill battle, because they are able to proliferate a lot faster than the white blood cells are able to kill them and consume them. So they're unable to actually put a significant dent in the numbers of the Gonococci, while the Gonococci continue to wipe out a lot of the white blood cells. And eventually 1196 calls up the attack and calls off a retreat, pointing out that they could easily be wiped out even with the few members of them that can still fight. At which point they return a report to the white blood cell commander, who merely begins to devise a plan of attack and orders all of the white blood cells to return to the lymph nodes so they can actually figure out what to do and how to best strategize an attack plan going forward. And sure enough, as 2143 is going on his blood deliveries, he actually sees this. He walks by some of his red blood cell friends. They tell him that the area is infected with Gonococci and that he'll have to go around. And the other red blood cells even openly acknowledge that that they don't think the white blood cells are doing a good enough job, because if they were, the area wouldn't be infected, and they would probably be able to get through no problem, since it's their job to keep the the red blood cells safe, and to their knowledge, they're not doing that. So at which point all the white blood cells come along, covered in blood, but still very much alive. At which point, all the other rookies, except for 2143, take this opportunity to scold them and basically tell them how to do their job, is what we're establishing. They basically come along, tell the white blood cells that they're not trying hard enough and they should do better. And one of 1196's squad mates actually comes up and tries to defend themselves on their behalf, on the rest of the squad's behalf, but 1196 merely stops her, and they continue going on their merry way. At which point 2143 realizes that the situation is likely a lot more serious and begins to develop a bit more respect for them. And sure enough, they begin to gather toward the white blood cells begin to gather toward the lymph node, where they're actually given orders by the commander that they're going to be going on a full-on assault, and that they need to be prepared to lose some people. But if they continue at it, they will be able to actually survive the front lines and fend off the Gonococci. And with that, they proceed to march, led by their general, who is this older eye patch lady person who has seen some stuff. She's very beaten up, and she openly doesn't agree with how the top command is actually handling things, pointing out that well, they don't really fight on the front lines all that much. They mostly just do logistics and stuff like that, and kind of form a plan around that. So they don't really know how bad the front line really is. And sure enough, as they're moving toward the enemy and are trying to stop them from reaching the urethra so that they don't hurt the sperm cells, they're trying to stop the Gonococci, but the general openly admits this, that there's a chance they may not survive due to the fact that the Gonococci proliferate a lot faster than they do, and a lot faster than they can kill them, and that they're fighting a losing battle. And everybody starts murmuring words of concern to one another, but 1196 immediately just tells them all to shut up and let the general continue speaking. At which point she responds that yes, the situation is dire, but that if they continue at it, they can make this place safe for all the other cells in the body, and that it's their job to keep the place safe and put their life on the line. So that's what they're going to do. At which point 1196 talks to the commander, and it responds that she agrees wholeheartedly with how she's deciding to handle this, and they move directly into battle. And while they're doing that, 2146 and one of his comrades, they actually get commands from one of the higher up red blood cells, one of the older red blood cells, pointing out that they need to deliver to the urethra and lower body, since everybody else is footing the bill and not actually doing it because they're scared of the Gonococci. So, and because the rookies basically have no refusal rights because they're still new at the job, and also apparently it's the way that's always been instructed, but the rookies actually do take worse jobs and some of the more life-threatening jobs that to basically make them toughen up faster. They merely respond that they have no choice, and when the other rookie actually asks that they can't go there because the white blood cells aren't doing their job as well enough to keep everything safe, the older red blood cell merely responds that it's not really up to him to say, because they don't really have a way to actually defend the white blood, to actually help the white blood cells, and that all they can do is continue to do their job. At which point 2143 actually takes what the guy says to heart and decides that he and his friend are going to deliver the oxygen, much to his friend's chagrin, who has openly admitted several times that he doesn't want to do it. So, but 2143 either doesn't listen to him or doesn't care about his protests and decides that they're going to do the job anyway and proceed to go forward with it. And then, sure enough, continue going forward to fight to go where the Gonococci are to help deliver their oxygen for them. Meanwhile, the white blood cells arrive at where the Gonococci are and proceed to fight back, but as we firmly established, they're fighting an uphill battle that they may or may not win, because not only do the Gonococci proliferate very quickly, but on top of that, they have armor made out of cell wall, which if you guys don't know, is found in plant cells and apparently bacterium. And basically it gives those types of things with any types of cells with it, or bacterium in this case. It gives any types of cells or bacterium with it a more rigid structure, which enables them to be more resilient, which is why plants are able to survive and be a lot sturdier than they normally would be, and why some bacteria are a lot easier to infect the body than other types of bacteria, because they have cell walls which mostly protect them from attacks by white blood cells and the like. So it's very hard to actually fight them off. But sure enough, the Gonococci begin closing in on the white blood cells, and because they're mostly female, it turns into a hentai for a few minutes. Because the Gonococci have these big tentacles on their back, and they just they're kind of more like snakes, but they have these big tentacles on their back that they just wrap the white blood cells in and basically hold them in their tentacles, which is kind of, as I said, hentai. But as they're doing that, the Gonococci, who for up to this point have only said the word lonely over and over, actually respond that they feel like they and the white blood cells are kindred spirits and that they should be friends, since they believe that everybody is afraid of the white blood cells and that they should be, and that sure enough they don't really have any friends of their own, so they feel like they would get along, but the white blood cells merely tell them to shut up and keep fighting, and that doesn't end well for them. At which point 2143 and his friend begin to arrive at the fight area and find a bunch of pus on the ground, which in short is just made of dead white blood cells and a bunch of other things. Mainly white blood cells, dead cells, and dead bacterium. Basically, any dead cells in the body, they're just kind of flushed out of the system and left as pus. But they quickly realize that something is wrong. They quickly realize that what happened, and they even find a survivor and go to check on her. But then they're attacked by a Gonococci, and the survivor attacks it and exerts all of her energy to bringing it down, which causes her to collapse. At which point a macrophage shows up, who apparently is doing cleanup because that's one of the jobs that they do. But a macrophage actually shows up and asks what they're doing there, and 2143 gives her a straightforward answer. They're doing their job. They're delivering oxygen, and the macrophage appreciates their hard work, but also points out that they need to be a bit careful because they're kind of on the nearing the front line of battle, and that it's going to be very infected going forward. So they need to be extremely careful if they're going to continue. At which point, the 2143's friend actually remarks that they should probably take the macrophage's words to heart and go back. But 2143 openly refuses and said that if he wants to go back, he can, but he's going to continue doing his job. And the other red blood cell, realizing he can't leave 2143 alone, actually follows him. At which point they wind up on the fight scene and quickly discover that everyone has been captured by the Gonococci and are being squeezed to death, for lack of a better word. At which point the Gonococci respond that they feel like the white blood cells have been too insolent, and now they're going to be turned into ugly pus, which 2143 openly takes offense to. And sure enough, when 1196, who has also been captured by this point, tells him to run, he not only does he stand his ground, but he openly states that he doesn't think the pus is ugly. As according to him, he sees it as a sign that the white blood cells did their job and risked their lives to keep the body safe, and that he can't really call somebody doing their job and dying on the front lines ugly. He finds a silent beauty in that, and he feels like that the white blood cells should strive to keep the body safe despite all of the lost comrades that they've seen. And when that snaps 1196 and the rest of the white blood cells out of their funk, and they start fighting back, to no real avail. But But one of the Gonococci actually scolds 2143, asking him what a red blood cell will know, since he doesn't fight on the front lines and isn't a white blood cell. So what would he know? He doesn't know anything. But 2143 openly remarks that he does know, because regardless of what their designated job actually is, they both the white blood cells and red blood cells risk their lives regardless, and whereas 1196's job is to fight off bacterium, his job is to risk his life delivering oxygen, and he's going to do that. At which point the body consumes antibiotics, which causes the cell walls on the Gonococci to dissolve. And it's revealed to be penicillin, but because the body took penicillin to get rid of the Gonococci, or at least weaken it enough that his immune system can actually fight it off. The white blood cells quickly realize that they now have the advantage and swiftly defeat all the Gonococci before they can proliferate again and overwhelm them, while they still have the advantage. But the general openly admits that they need to prioritize the safety of the red blood cells first and foremost, and tells 1196 to get her through, and 1196 does, although she knows that if she leaves the general alone, she'll die, and the general makes her peace with that, pointing out that she doesn't really care as long as she gives her life keeping the body safe. But sure enough, 1196 just silently nods to her, and then starts killing Gonococci to help the red blood cells get through. And even though they do have a delivery to go through, 2143 actually stops the two of them and states that he wants to see them do their job a little bit more before they leave and go on. And sure enough, the white blood cells are able to, despite being badly outnumbered originally, are able to clean up the rest of the Gonococci and stop the infection, which the remaining white blood cells celebrate despite the loss of their many comrades. At which point they attend a wake of sorts for the white blood cells that fell in battle. And when 2143 asks what's going to happen to them, 1196 merely responds that they're going to be flushed out of the body as pus and then be flushed out of the urethra. So they'll be fine. They'll pass away peacefully, as it were. And 2143 only just solemnly nods. At which point his friend finally claims clean and points out that he feels like he was being too much of a dick to the white blood cells, pointing out that it wasn't his place to tell them how to do their jobs, and he feels like he owes them an apology. And 1196 tells him that no apology is really needed, since he knows that they can't really defend each other on the battlefield. So they don't really know the ins and outs of everybody's job. They can't really communicate what kind of jobs they have. So, and that's just a hazard of the work. That sometimes people just kind of don't understand them very well, and that's when problems happen. People start accusing the white blood cells of not doing their jobs, and the white blood cells just have to soldier on because they know how to do their jobs, and they can't really. There's no real way to translate that to other cells. But in case with that, the damage report for the white blood cell neutrophil division is actually reported back to the T cell commander, a helper T cell. I'm not entirely sure what he's the helper T cell of this body, as we're putting it, and he's understandably a bit upset because he feels like there were way too many casualties, and points out that mainly takes offense to that because he realizes that in this body where infections are kind of a little more common than they should be, that the white blood cells need to step up and make sure that they put their life on the line a little bit less. They need to work harder so that less people die, because the body is already understaffed as is, so they need to preserve as many lives as possible. But in any case, this episode mainly showcases how sexually transmitted diseases or sexually transmitted infections work, and how it can wreak havoc on the body, especially if you don't take care of yourself. But it also showcases 2143 actually growing a spine, as it were, and actually coming to terms with the fact that he's a red blood cell, and red blood cells, much like white blood cells, have to be willing to put their life on the line to do their job. Regardless of what that job is, everybody is risking their lives, and he needs to be and he finally accepts that in this episode. But in any case, that's my review of Cells at Work Code Black. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below. And also be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that I'm always saying thanks. So be sure to check those out in the description below as well. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching, and also next time I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!